Hi Lorenzo, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Ivan Komušanac. I'm joined with my colleague Lorenzo and Claudia Gross from Siemens Gamesa and Peter Springeman from WPD Wind Manager, who due to technical difficulties you cannot see him, but we will try to sort it out as soon as possible. So he is here with us. Everything is going as planned. Just won't be able to see him, I hope, for just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to give the floor to Lorenzo, who's going to walk us through the introduction of this webinar and why are we doing it. Lorenzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivan. So I'm Lorenzo Marcelli, head of conference programs at Wind Europe, and I will be saying a few words about our upcoming Aeolis event, which will take place in November in Brussels. It will be the third edition after one successful event in Leuven in 2019 and an equally successful virtual edition in 2020. And so this year we'll try to get the best of both worlds, as we will be going hybrid, meaning there will be a physical component in Brussels at the Egg, a venue located close to Midi Station. And we're aiming to get at least 200 participants physically in Brussels and have developed for this a safety protocol in line with the regional rules, meaning physical attendees will have to bring a COVID-19 safety certificate, so proof of vaccination or a negative PCR test or proof of recovery with a certain freshness as per the legislation. And as we anticipate that maybe still some people might not be able to travel, we have also decided to allow for online participation, meaning most of the sessions will be live streamed. So now, as for the sessions, we have a great program for you. It's going to be a 2-day event, and day one we'll be focusing mostly on repowering and lifetime extension. And so we're also discussing adding a part on second-hand markets as well. So we'll start with a regulatory overview on lifetime extension and repowering across Europe, looking at different countries and see how the rules are evolving there. Then we will zoom into lifetime extension, looking at user cases and business models, including new ways to finance lifetime extension projects. Then we'll look at repowering, again, taking some case studies and focusing on the business cases. After that, we may look at second-hand markets from a practical and business point of view. And then we'll finish with combined renewable energy projects, exploring whether adding a solar, storage, or hydrogen element to your wind farm can improve its business case, in particular when you're thinking about a lifetime extension. Then on day two, the focus will be on decommissioning, recycling, and circularity. We'll start again with a tour d'Europe to look at national initiatives and developments. Then we'll look at decommissioning. As you may recall, at Aeolis 2020, we unveiled some industry guidelines on decommissioning best practices, and that work paved the way towards some technical specifications. And it should ideally ultimately lead to some standards. And so we'll update you on how things are progressing on that front, and we'll also get insights on the economics of onshore decommissioning and the logistics for offshore decommissioning. And then we'll also look at initiatives to foster circular approaches in the wind industry across the wind supply chain before we finish with a 2-part deep dive into the recycling of blades. The first part will be dedicated to giving you a panorama of existing and upcoming solutions, so some that are already market ready and some that are in development. And the second part will look at the shorter term and see how we can make the most of the currently most market-ready solutions, essentially looking at co-processing and a couple of others. We will have to take you through this great lineup of over 40 speakers, some already confirmed, some about to. And as you can see, we have a broad coverage of the wind supply chain. So I can only invite you to mark your calendars, book your tickets. Registration is open, and join us hopefully in Brussels on 4 and 5th of November. And if you can't wait until then, well, this webinar will also, of course, give you a pre-taste of what you can expect to hear in Brussels in November. So back to you, Ivan, and thank you to our panelists for joining today. Wish you a great webinar.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for the introduction. Yeah, we are delighted that we can give you a sneak peek into what's going to happen in a couple of weeks now in Brussels. So the idea is that we're going to have 3 presentations. Me as the moderator, I'm just going to give a short presentation introducing the topic of repowering and lifetime extension a bit. After which we're going to have Peter Spingeman from WPD Wind Manager also giving a presentation, followed by Claudia Grotz. And after that, we're going to have as much as we have the time until 3 p.m. Brussels time to discuss about any other questions you might have. So feel free to use the chat box, type your questions inside. We're going to try to answer almost all of them if the time permits. So in short, let's start with repowering and what we see happening in Europe over the next few years. Why do we talk about repowering? Why do we care about this topic so much here? Well, the onshore wind fleet is very old in Europe. The reason behind it, of course, is that the pioneers, Germany installed quite a lot of wind 15, 20, 25 years ago. So right now we have to start thinking on what do we do with those old wind turbines. We can either extend their lifetime, or we can repower them, or we just completely decommission them and the site doesn't produce a single kilowatt hour of electricity anymore. Just some sort of a clarification here. By repowering, we mean when you tear down the whole turbine, including the foundation, and you set up a new one, and basically everything else. So the reblading, the partial repowering, changing electrical equipment, that all falls under this umbrella of lifetime extension. So coming back to the per country views, Denmark, as being the most famous leader in wind energy, has a big share of its wind capacity already older than 15 years, more than half of the installed onshore fleet. But on the other side, Germany has the most in terms of capacity due to its large size. So we have more than 21 gigawatts that are older than 15 years. Definitely the largest market, the market that we look the most when it comes to old onshore wind assets. However, in addition to Denmark, there's a couple of other countries worth mentioning. We have quite a lot of old assets in Spain. We have in Italy. We see a lot of developments also in the Netherlands and the UK, as well as France. So what does this mean for the future of installations over the next 10 years? Well, in 2020, we installed, Europe as a whole, we installed 15 gigawatts. 12 of those were onshore wind. And actually quite little was repowering in that whole portfolio. We had less than 400 megawatts of repowering projects in those 12 gigawatts of onshore wind installations. We see that rising. We see in 2021 that perhaps even reaching 1 gigawatt and then tripling already by 2027. The reason is the increase in Germany, as we see quite a lot of projects leaving the feed-in tariff regime. And then after that, we're going to see quite a lot of activity also from Spain, France, Italy, also Portugal, Denmark, and the UK. Now, this is not an idealistic scenario. This could have been much better. There is a lot of things can be improved when it comes to repowering projects. Issue we have right now is linked to permitting, and most notably to the stricter environmental rules that have occurred over the last 20 years. All of a sudden, wind turbine that was installed 500 meters from a dwelling now faces more stringent constraints regarding environment, and also the turbines have become much larger, so they have a bigger impact on a dwelling. So you have to balance out where to put the new turbine and at the same time not lose on the old capacity. But where does lifetime extension fit in all of this? Well, on our analysis over the next in our 5-year outlook, we noticed that actually most of the capacity, so 3/4, that reaches its 20 years lifetime, will probably have some sort of lifetime extension or just continue operating. You might have seen an example in Denmark, where Denmark originally thought of reducing the number of turbines and going very strong into repowering and reducing from 4,300 to below 2,000 turbines by 2030. But the recent report from the Danish Energy Agency showed that, in fact, wind turbines have a much longer lifetime than expected. So therefore, they pushed their target to 2040 for reducing the number of turbines. So that's why we see lifetime extension playing an important role here. Also to note, when we did this, the wholesale prices in Europe were much lower than they are today. Perhaps this will play also. It's probably going to discuss about this a bit later. Capacity under repowering. So that's the old capacity of the old wind farm that's going to be repowered, and it's going to increase its capacity eventually. That's only a small part over the next 5 years. And then fully decommissioned projects, meaning that they're completely removed from the system, they're going to be also very, very big contributor, and not contributor, but perhaps important factor over the next 5 years. The reason is the strict environmental rules. So in some locations, you just can only continue extending the lifetime until the winter of the wind turbines as much as possible, but at a certain moment, you just have to remove them. We, as Wind Europe, we did the analysis of more than 140 repowering projects in Europe. Most of them are, in fact, in Germany. Germany is has the most wind farms, and they're quite old, so therefore we saw quite a lot of activity there. But we also saw in the Netherlands, in France, Denmark, UK, Austria, even Luxembourg, Finland. So a lot of countries already have repowering projects. It's happening. It's picking up slowly, and we definitely expect much more to happen in the future. But what did we find from this analysis of those 142 projects? Well, we saw that the projects that were repowered, on average, they would be decommissioned after 17 years. Depends per country a bit. On the lower end, you had Germany, which had a repowering bonus, incentivizing operators to repower their site up until 2015. But on the other side, countries such as Spain, for instance, we saw that they actually have a much later point in which they decommission the wind turbines compared to other countries. And one final observation that we found in this analysis was that repowering projects, on average, have 27% fewer turbines than the older project. The capacity of the whole wind farm doubles because the new wind turbines are much more powerful than the old ones, and therefore the actual output, so the annual production, triples. So that's why we talk quite a lot about repowering. We try to really make it crystal clear that it's a very important part in order to reach our 2030 targets. Even the European Commission recognized that. That's why in the Renewables Directive, EU member states have to have permitting simplified for repowering. It should last up to 1 year, in some exceptional cases 2 years, but that's not what's been happening currently in the market. But Peter Spingeman from WPD Wind Manager will know what's the situation actually on the field. So Peter, with this, I'm going to give the floor to you and walk us through how you see it as an operator in Germany, but also in Europe today.
Yes, thank you very much, Ivan. I hope everybody can hear me. Thank you for the introduction and also for joining this conference. Let me shortly show my screen. And you can see now the slides I have prepared. As far as I have understood, Ivan, this is a kind of appetizer webinar where we try to give a little insight what is happening at the conference. And let me start this way. The last conference, the physical one in 2019 I have attended, was very, very good. Really, it was very excellent speaker line and was really good. And so it's a pleasure and really an honor for me to make this short presentation here today. So like already mentioned, you said this was quite interesting for me. I did not see the slides before in detail. Is that repowering has also been take place in Germany in average after year 17 of operation. And your explanation was yes, has something to do with the old repowering bonus, where you were getting a bonus, a plus on the remuneration scheme if you repower an old wind turbine somewhere close to the site, but not exactly at the site. So this is quite extraordinary and maybe a typical German procedure with the idea behind to clean up the landscape a bit, because Germany as an old market is like Denmark too, has a lot of single wind turbines everywhere. But this is not the case anymore. And I think if you look at more up-to-date projects, we will come to the year 18 and 22 roundabout, where repowering will currently be performed at the sites. I will give some examples and some few more comments on this later. So what is the question for the operator? And WPD Wind Manager is a technical operation control of a lot of wind farms. Some of them are owned by WPD itself, but most of them by different other clients. The old ones are public funds structure. Then we have single investors and a lot of institutional investors who are owning the wind farm. And each of these parties have a different viewpoint on the operating asset. It's quite clear that in Denmark, for example, the operator itself has a much more closer viewpoint and connection to the site. Maybe if it is the land owner himself or the farmer himself who's owning the turbine, and of course he wants to keep them as long in operation as it is possible, because he has already worked 20 years on this wind farm. If you now change the perspective and go to institutional investors and so on, they have a different viewpoint. It's one of many different operational assets, and maybe different viewpoint on repowering will follow this way. So what we see now is that inside the market in Germany, we have, if you look here, wind farms which have now entered 15 years of operation, now, let me say 50% public fund structures, so with private ownership, different people who are owning the wind farm, and 50% already owned by institutional investors. And the question automatically comes up, normally after 15 years in Germany, like mentioned before, also earlier after 12 years, what should we do at the end? Should we do the repowering, which is an option, which is not clear, which is quite uncertain? You have planning risk and so on. You need to invest money for the planning cost. I don't know, 800,000, 1 million euro, depending on the time and the complexity of the site. Or should you jump on the longer operation? And later on, and this is like in the real life, there will be the funeral, the dismantling, and it's just a question of time that at some part of the lifetime, an old wind farm needs to be dismantled. This is very important, and I think this topic will be a bit more covered by Claudia afterwards. So, and here, based on this situation, Wind Europe and other parties always came along with the message, so what should we do? Lifetime extension versus repowering? Is it should we go this way or should we go that way? And the reality we see inside the market is that it is not a versa, it is something like to check both and later on to have, for example, maybe a combination of both, like it is shown here, that if you have delays in the repowering planning and the permissions, that you automatically jump into the longer operation, into the lifetime extension, and then do the repowering. And simply, if this is not possible, yes, then obviously the only solution you have is longer operation or to dismantle the site. And there are some sites where there's no economical feasibility. Even if you have high electricity prices for the lifetime extension, then dismantling means simply the end. I will come to this a bit later. So let us shortly define what is repowering and what needs to be considered. From our viewpoint, it is clear who is the ownership. Is it a private investor? Is it public fund? Is it an institutional investor? Because they are the owners and they have to decide. And if you are the owner, you have to decide what should happen with your wind farm. And it's not your technical operation control like Wind Manager or somebody else who are doing this successfully in the market. Furthermore, it's very important to get a clear picture about the performance of the site. Of course, everybody is claiming the wind farm is not performing like predicted, but at the end, you want to define a scenario. What is the input you will get if you make a lifetime extension, if you want to operate the site longer, and what is the other option, the input if you do a repowering, and when is the best place or the best time to do it. The next point is technical performance. There are, of course, some sites, I already know some, where simply a long lifetime extension is, from the technical perspective, not possible or very expensive, because you have to exchange many parts and components of the turbines, and the question of operational costs related to land lease and so on, what is defining the OPEX. Then you have the contractual situation, has something to do with service. I know that you can also extend services, also full services over 20 years, as this is possible inside the market, but it's a question of price, and the land lease and so on is also a question of costs and of the legal situation. How long are you, from the legal perspective, able to operate the site? We have sites in Germany which are normally minimum defined for 25 years of operation. So the contracts normally look like you have 20 years and the operator has the option to extend for 5 years and again for 5 years in the normal case, that the operator is able, from the legal land lease perspective, to operate the site 30 years. It's different if you are owning the site yourself, the land yourself, but normally we have contracts in place inside the market, and the operator of the wind farm is normally not identical to the land ownership. Then you have the site, the wind conditions, turbulences, what new turbine is possible. You have to consider administrational restrictions, feasibility. Is there a chance to make successfully a repowering, or is it simply from the planning perspective and the experts there impossible or quite uncertain? And based on this, you have to draw a conclusion. Should we start to do this or simply forget the site? And in the WPD pipeline, we have at least 20% of the sites where we say it doesn't make sense to consider a repowering for the site, because it's simply impossible to get a permission, because the site is not existing anymore as designated area for wind energy, because we have environmental, like it is defined here, environmental issues, which will simply does not allow a new permission, or because you are not able to get the land lease contracts again in place for the repowering. So there's always a situation where someone must say the question is easily answered, lifetime extension, because there's no repowering possible. And if you go to the lifetime extension, I've marked it a bit in orange here, then you have to consider it's a classical way, like everybody will do. You have to compare production of the old wind farm. Here, the situation is a bit different. As more younger the wind farms are, as higher is the production. If we talk about wind farms with 500, 600 kilowatt turbines or 1 megawatt, the production is simply so low that it's starting to get uninteresting to the lifetime extension. But as more modern the turbine are, as higher is the production. If we talk about 3,000 megawatt hours per unit, then is more interesting is also the lifetime extension. And currently, good news for the operators, we have incredibly high electricity pricing inside the market, and the new PPAs we have done for our operational assets are at the moment roundabout, depends on the time when we have locked in, between 5.8 and 7.5 cent, which is really, really good. In the beginning of the year or end of last year, we were talking about maybe 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And based on this, you normally do, from the operator's perspective, independent where you are, if this is Germany or somewhere else in Europe, what is making sense, repowering versus lifetime extension. So here you say, what should we do? And in all cases, someone is saying the repowering itself is so interesting that we do not put the story completely away. We only jump on lifetime extension, even if repowering is possible. You are still considering this, but maybe you are waiting a bit because the economical feasibility of the old wind farm is still good enough to keep it longer in operation. And if you have this in mind, then you have already to consider what is the time frame you need to do a repowering. And in Germany, it's minimum 5 years. So this is the reason why you should start with these considerations, not in lifetime year 20, so better earlier. I know in other countries, procedures are faster, maybe a bit more flexible, but in Germany, latest point to start to consider these aspects in detail is the year 15. Should we do repowering planning? Should we start over or not? So the repowering in Germany has some framework as part of the wind energy. You already see that Germany has started with benefits to the repowering early enough. It means that in Germany you can dismantle the old wind turbines and you put new turbines at the same site or also at the neighboring sites. There are different scenarios. Principally, there are some areas foreseen for repowering projects which are located not directly at the site, but where you can jump maybe with the old project to a new site. You need a new permission. This means you need to make a complete new planning procedure. They don't mind so far. If there are wind farms in operation, you have to start again from the beginning. Yeah, you have to consider the wind farm ownership, and this means you also need permission, not only to make a planning, you also need an order from the owners, if it is private, public, or institutional investors. No, and you need somebody who is allowing you to start the planning to do so. If you do this as like wind manager, as without permission from the ownerships, it is nothing worse, because we are working for the owner to do the repowering and not the other way around. And we have hard requirements. So we have in Germany really hard requirements concerning the new turbines. These are defined in the new remuneration system, EEG 2017-2021, which means if somebody is doing an economical feasible project in the new remuneration scheme, this means you have to realize large hub heights 100 meters and higher, and you have to consider new turbine types. Something what we have seen in the French market is there's a possibility to put the old turbine away and take an identical one or a slightly different one at the same site is in Germany not feasible, because in the remuneration scheme only large wind turbines will be able to succeed in a tendering procedure, not an old one anymore. Procedures is, like already mentioned, the planning phase start early enough, 5 years before end of lifetime, considering planning cost, who is taking over the planning cost. If you are working as an operator, the wind farm is always in an SPV, and the question is then who's taking over the planning cost. Principally, the SPV, the old wind farm company, could also take over the planning cost out of the income from the operation for the repowering, and this procedure will currently performed for a lot of sites from WPD. So I have some problems with the feasibility and risk. So question must be answered to the operators. How realistic is the repowering? Who's taking over the risk? If the old SPV is taking over the costs, they will also take over the risk. If it is another one, he wants to have shares or maybe the complete project. Some other key factors: all wind farms which have been successfully repowered show a much better business case compared to the LTE, to the lifetime extension. So this is also the driver and the reason why to do this. Later, maybe there will be some questions about this. Has the situation currently changed due to the high prices of electricity? Is it now more? Is it even better to keep the old wind turbines in operation? I think this question will come. Then we have, of course, with the new turbines, 2 to 4 times higher energy yields compared to the old one. Also depends on the size of the turbines and the amount. And you are entering again in Germany a new fixed, more or less fixed remuneration scheme, which has less risk than working only on PPAs or jumping for every 2 years from one tariff into another. If you go to the lifetime extension, so the vice versa procedure, we also have some political framework in Germany. And I think it is more or less, even if it is not written in law, identical to other countries, has something to do with the technical expert opinion for the remaining lifetime. So somebody must tell you how much is possible for the old wind turbine, how long it is possible to operate it from the technical perspective. You need this information, and in some cases you already ask this information, even not only in year 20, also earlier. So what is the remaining lifetime of my operating asset? And if there are really red flags in such a report and you have to exchange a lot of components, or you have to invest a lot of money to keep the wind farm into operation, it is one of the decision makers later on to start a repowering planning or not. And also here, the contractual situation, what is possible, how long could I keep the wind farm there in operation from a legal perspective. So the questions here is on one hand site specifically, and on the other hand the cost factor. So what are the cost considerations? We'll see some on the next slide. What is the legal situation? Are there other limitations, maybe also in the permission? We see already permissions where the lifetime has been limited to 20 years, but these were test sites and so on, but these are existing too. The next question, which is quite interesting, I think the last time there was in 2019, there was a very excellent discussion about what is possible currently in the retrofitting and into the optimization. Here, what is possible to not only to keep the wind farm in operation, is it possible to optimize something? Here we see a lot of numbers inside the market, but if you really want to invest money again in your old wind farm site, something is possible, but to a reasonable extent. Let me say it this way. So do not expect 20% more production, but something between 2 and 5% is maybe possible from our viewpoint. And is there still the possibility existing for a future repowering? So easily answered is, do I have time to wait? Could I wait with my decision? Procedures is, like already mentioned, somebody must verify and check the contracts and the permission, how long is possible to keep the wind farm in operation. I know if currently wind farms will be bought and sold, that this point will already be defined in detail, but for the old wind farms, it was not always the case. So it was something which was so far into the future that nobody really looked on this point. What is the technical status of the operating asset? Look on the technical operational readiness of the turbine. What is the availability? What is the production? What are the costs? What are the spare part exchanges and the maintenance and the works which have been done in the past, and try to extrapolate these costs with some higher values into the future. And the feedback on this is that most wind farms in Germany, and I think also in Europe, will allow a longer operation according to the contractual situation. And most of the turbines we see inside the market, also the old ones, allow definitely a longer operation of about 2 to 5 years above the 20 years design lifetime we see currently inside the market. And if you want to, some of them have even more, but if you want to extend this value, it's quite clear that you have also maybe invest, you have to share some, exchange some components and so on. Please note that for a larger amount of older turbines, the design and certification documentation is not available anymore, simply due to the fact that the manufacturer is not existing and so on. So it is in this case, in this kind of calculations, sometimes a bit finger into the wind procedure. So they try to reconsider the missing information from the old wind turbines, and then defining the 2 to 5 years. If you go to the turbine and verify it from year to year, it could be even longer. And for the older wind farm assets, the lifetime extension was economically feasible in Germany until end of 2020, because until end of 2020 you were getting the old remuneration. This has changed. We have at the moment, like mentioned, high electricity prices, and the status and the message we were having in 2020 or 2019 is that we were going all afraid that we have to dismantle all old wind farms because it is simply not economically feasible to keep them in operation. But due to the prices we see currently inside the market, this will not happen in the manner we were all afraid of. So what has WPD? What is WPD's viewpoint on this? Of course, these decisions, there is not a company decision to keep wind farms in operation, or there's not a company decision to do a repowering. This will be always decided site specifically. And you see here, this is simply the track record what's on the sites which have been repowered in the time I was working for WPD, or even before, is that whenever it is economically feasible, whenever we have a business concept, we have done this. So we have done the repowering, and for all sites you see here, most of them on the public farm structure, we also have the large majority of all owners to perform the repowering and to decide and to clarify the planning cost for the repowering, that they will be taken over from them to do the repowering. So it is, from our perspective, quite clear that repowering is a wish also from the operators, and I think this could be easily transported also to other markets. In the long-term run, repowering is a very good idea, to say it this way. So this is the last slide. So the question again, repowering versus lifetime extension. So the vice versa viewpoint is a theoretical one. I know somebody likes to bring it into presentations and into the conferences, but in reality, it's only a hypothetical discussion. If repowering is economically feasible and possible, the repowering will be done. It's just a question of time. If somebody is not doing this, if somebody wants to wait and said, I do not want to do a repowering, latest at the end of the land lease contract, somebody else will come and do this instead of you as operator. If a repowering is not possible, it's also quite clear, lifetime extension, as long as it is possible from the technical and economical perspective. At the moment, it is the case. And if repowering needs time, also the question is quite clear. The answer is quite clear: lifetime extension until repowering is possible. And we have at the moment a lot of sites which run into the beyond end of lifetime period and has been operated 2 or 3 years until repowering could take place. And if none of the 3 mentioned before is possible, of course, somebody has to consider the dismantling. And I hope that Claudia will have some slides about the dismantling later on. Thank you very much for the attention, and sorry for my broken webcam. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks a lot for the detailed view. So we will not only talk about repowering and lifetime extension at the LS conference. Claudia's colleagues from Siemens Gamesa will also talk about these topics as well.
Yep.
But Claudia today is going to give us a presentation on this other part of the value chain, which is more about what happens after repowering or lifetime extension. So Claudia, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. And I hope you can see both myself and my slides.
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good, because I can only see the slides at the moment. So yeah, thanks very much also from my side for inviting me. My name is Claudia Grotz. I'm heading Public Affairs Europe in Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy, one of the leading manufacturers in Europe. And I'm also chairing the working group Sustainability in Wind Europe, where we discuss about the topics of dismantling and recycling. And yes, as Peter said, my last attendance to the EOLIS was also in 2019, which was a very good event, and a lot of things happen in our area that we are looking at in the EOLIS, so it's definitely worthwhile going. And after this long abstinence during the pandemic, it's double worth going to events, so I also very much look forward to doing this. In the EOLIS seminar, my colleagues who work on lifetime extension and what we offer there, they will be there and also present there for the cases that Peter has just mentioned in his contribution when lifetime extension makes sense and is done. However, because I am working in the sustainability working group, I would like to cover today the topics of what we do when lifetime extension and repowering is no option or is over, and when wind farms are dismantled, what is actually happening with the turbines, with the blades, and what is happening in the area of recycling. So, and this is also my first slide that I got from the market intelligence from Wind Europe, and that we also use in the working group sustainability, because you've seen Ivan showed basically the repowering potential in Europe, how old are which turbines in what year, and how many could we potentially see repowered. This slide shows the other side of this. So looking at the blade weight and the blades that come from the dismantled turbines, because yes, I suppose we have a lot of experts here listening, so you will know, and that's what we're aware of in the wind industry, a large part of the wind turbine, 90–95% can be actually recycled. It's steel, it's electronic parts, but the blades, because they are of composite material, they have a certain challenge. So this is why we also look in the wind industry specifically at the blades and what is done with the blade waste. And basically, yes, we found out that by 2030 there could be an amount of 52 tons per year of blades and blades weight. And we also put in a line because one option to deal with the old blades basically coming from today's old turbines is to use them in the process of cement co-processing, so shredder them and make them, use them in the cement production basically. And today's capacity is covering the amount of waste that would be coming from the turbines, but in the future there will be debate and there will be a need to look into capacities if this path is followed further. And then what we're currently doing is also exchanging on the capacities basically, and knowing what can be expected in this area. So to look into this topic has been on the one hand driven by governmental focus and increased legislation in this area. to use either reusing materials and to avoid landfilling. There is, for example, today in 4 European countries, landfill bans in Austria, in Finland, in Germany, and in the Netherlands. And yeah, France is an additional case, and here basically the blades should not only be not landfilled, but France has last year published a legislation for circularity that asks for specific recycling of parts and increasing parts of the dismantled turbines starting from 2024. So that is the legal side of it. And the other thing is that in general, recyclable products are increasingly needed and also increasingly demanded in the renewable energy sector, certainly also in other sectors. But for us, yes, being a green industry, it's important that we can show full resource utilization, and certainly the demand is growing. We know that we have much higher targets ahead for installation of turbines in Europe producing green electricity. So we want to, of course, also be able to offer solutions what will happen at the end of the lifetime. So looking from the perspective of my company, yeah, you might be aware of this as well, that in Wind Europe, we have called this year for a landfill ban in Europe starting from 2025. So that means that member states of the European Union should not allow landfilling anymore, and the wind industry will take care to have solutions so that landfilling does not take place anymore. And we from our side have worked up together with many other players in the industry on that, and we are also now working on making sure that this can be fulfilled and can happen. And we also are engaged, and this is only one of the projects. There is a couple of more projects where different industry players are engaged, but I'm bringing this one. It's the Decom Blades project that has started only recently together with other major players in the industry. And there we try to find solutions on the decommissioning and also on the recycling of already existing and installed blades. So basically, yes, that would be the blades that are decommissioned this year, next year, and the next year in 2025, when the landfill ban basically should kick in, and that is looking at all kinds of options, also cement co-processing, but also at other options available at the moment and also in the future. So, and the next topic that I want to briefly touch upon is that we are also looking into the future design and material, and how we can improve, especially the recyclability of blades. And we have just very recently announced an offshore blade solution that enables blade materials to be recovered and recycled. So we have the first recyclable blade actually ready now. We have produced them already in early 2021 and tested a lot before, and it is planned to install them in the first projects from 2022 going forward. And there will be an industrialized setup for the recyclable blade production, and that is planned for 2022. And with the production capacity, we expect it to increase continuously, and it shall be ready for bigger offshore projects in 2024. And to basically close the loop, these are the two topics that we're also working on in the Wind Europe Working Group Sustainability, looking at what is happening with the existing blades and what can be done in the future blades and in the future materials. So this is our solution. Maybe another slide to show a little bit more how this will be done. So once the blades are decommissioned, they will be disassembled and transported. They will be put into a mild acidic solution. And the important part of these blades is a new type of resin, and it dissolves in a mild acidic solution at an elevated temperature after a few hours. And what can be done then is to reclaim the separated components easily, more easily. That is not possible in the current blades. And then on the one hand, the resin can be filtered out and coagulated, and the glass fiber fabrics, they can be rinsed. And basically then, yes, there is a different quality available, and the wood and the metal and the glass fiber can be used, reused in other industries when, yeah, this is available and done. Yeah, that's it as a quick teaser from my side. Thanks very much for your time, and I think, yes, I hand back to Ivan.
Thank you, Claudia. We have some 5 minutes for Q&As, so let's kick it off with that. Maybe just for starters, the recording will be available for Wind Europe's members on our website. And Claudia, maybe the first question goes to you. It's because you showed the recycled blade being used in offshore wind. My question is, before we give the floor to the participants, why an offshore wind first, and will we see something like this in onshore wind?
Yeah, it's true, and I've also said it on the slide that it is for the moment or has been introduced in the offshore market first. It's been due to the market interest coming from there first, and some requirements. And it will be initially sold as an option for new offshore turbines. But we are also currently, of course, in the process of looking to evaluate it and to introduce it into onshore products. And if we do it, it would also require a process, as we have done for some time before. We have launched it in the offshore segment. The blades also for the onshore sites, for the onshore technology, they would need to be tested first, and that needs to be done very thoroughly. So yeah, it is planned, but we will communicate any further details and timing when, yeah, this has been really done and completed. So I cannot say much more, but yes, it's not only going to remain an offshore solution.
Okay, thank you. It's good to hear that. We have one question for Peter, which is linked to Germany, and basically a lot of interest has been put on the national repowering strategy. So the question is, if you had a message, Peter, for policymakers on what to improve in order to facilitate better repowering, what would it be from your view, from your point of view as an operator?
Yes, the biggest obstacle in Germany is, even if it is difficult to explain to other European partners, is environmental impact. And the environmental impact is the biggest challenge. So the message to the policy would be to change the environmental impact law and not only the emission law and the planning laws, accordingly that existing wildlife and protected species and so on, which are existing in an operating wind farm, will be considered as normal and not as an obstacle that repowering will be avoided. So this is simply the message. Anything else is, in my viewpoint, on a good track. Germany is far beyond the goals, everybody knows, but they have repowering in focus. They talk about this, and I think there will be a good solution within the next years, visible after the election next week, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Let's go back then to Claudia, and a question that's somewhat linked to the first question I had, which is how much demand you see from developers on putting sustainability on top of their agenda, or do they come to you as a turbine manufacturer still looking mostly at price? Is the price the main criterion, or do you see? I mean, we saw now in this example of offshore wind that there was obviously an interest to have recycled blade, but what's the situation now from your point?
Yeah, I would say there is a big interest. I can well take the example also from the working group sustainability in Wind Europe, which is not at all a group where the manufacturers of blades and of turbines sit together, but it's a whole industry representation, and a lot and all the majors, I would say, operators and developers are also in, and it's a huge interest in the whole industry. I would say it's for the reason I've mentioned before, that the industry sees its responsibility also. Oh, now Peter is in picture as well.
Yes, it's the magic. I don't know what has happened.
There is a huge responsibility in the industry, but I would say, and Peter, I don't know if you can also echo that the financing sector is also asking for that. There's a lot of sustainability funds online, and that looks at the whole circle of a product. So I think that is increasing from various sides.
Yes, Claudia, absolutely right. This has simply been avoided because
I think we lost Peter.
Now we can see him but not hear him.
Nearly all wind farms we have been dismantled. The old wind turbines have been sold or have been used as spare parts and stuff like this. So investors, they will ask for this for sure.
Okay, I hope you understood. We certainly did. So there is going to be much more interest on the sustainability from also other angles. But with that, it's 3 o'clock Brussels time. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Peter, for joining us, and thank you everyone who was listening to us in this webinar. We hope that we caused a bit of more interest to join the AOLIS conference. We hope to see you in a couple of weeks in Brussels. And if you have any further questions, drop us a line at policy@windeurope.org. And with that, looking forward to see you on our next event, Claudia and Peter. Have a nice day and goodbye, everyone.
Same to you. Bye.